This is Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Good morning and welcome to Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Happy Sunday, everyone.
Happy Sunday. How's it going?
It's good. You know what? It's warmer today. It's almost feeling like early spring in New York.
It's coming. You know we're going to have like one more blizzard, though.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Like in April.
At least one more snowstorm because it just wouldn't be New York without one.
Yeah.
But it's definitely warmer. I'm feeling better.
Yay.
I should have took Geritol. I did not have a chance to, but I'm here nonetheless.
You look great.
Thank you.
You got this little like Gucci sort of
I know,
situation.
like the fake Gucci, because I am on the protest Gucci movement, okay?
Yeah,
so I have the fake one.
Of course.
I just want to clarify for that. So my name is Selena Hill. I'm here on Let Your Voice Be Heard. Of course, this is a show where we talk politics, social issues, pop culture, a little foreign policy, and of course we do that from a very diverse, multicultural perspective. We have a great show lined up.
Yay.
If you want to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, that's BeHeard_radio. We will be going live on Instagram as well. We have Facebook, facebook.com/Let Your Voice Be Heard. And you can follow me personally at Miss Selena Hill.
If you're nasty.
Morning, Jackie.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be back in studio and on this almost spring day.
Yes.
And I'm Jackie Cohen. I'm political correspondent for Let Your Voice Be Heard, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jackie Cohen, JAQICOHEN, where I mostly tweet about the subway and how bad it is. And
not only that, so Jackie's preparing to go to a rally. So literally, I was on my way here driving, and I heard 1010 talking about there's going to be an anti-congestion pricing rally,
which is not the one that I'm going to.
Right. So I'm hearing about it because they're protesting putting tolls on all the free bridges, and Jackie's going to be there protesting that protest.
Listen, anyone that lives in New York City knows that right now our subway system is not working. Our buses are the slowest in North America. Something needs to change. We need to modernize our subway system. And so we have a number of politicians. Right now we're in the budget session in Albany. There's a week left for the state to pass the state budget. And we have a number of politicians that are sort of anti-transit funding who are having this rally to oppose funding to fix the subway. And so we're going to show up and tell them that that's not acceptable, because clearly anybody riding the subway right now knows that the system's falling apart.
I remember it was something we were speaking offline probably a few months ago. And as a driver, I said, a congestion pricing tax is something that's going to affect me. And I remember you said, well, it's going to benefit the greater good of New York City. And as a driver, I also take the subway. So you said that it's a small sacrifice for the betterment of us all.
And also, Selena, I know that you drive into Manhattan quite a bit, but often,
once a week.
But often you're driving into Harlem, right? And so you wouldn't even have to pay a toll, right? This is a toll that would be applied 59th Street and below. Very few people are really driving in every single day. And what we know from census data is that on average, I think it's like 4% of all people living in the outer boroughs are driving in. And
4%, that's
4%.
Small.
And car owners, families that own cars that are driving into Manhattan, into the central business district of Manhattan, are paying or are earning more money than those that are dependent on transit and that are traveling into the same district. So on average. So it's a small number of people that would be paying a not astronomical toll. We have tolls on all these other bridge crossings already to get into Manhattan. And it would raise over $1 billion a year to help fix the subway. And if anybody that takes the subway every day knows, we need that money to get new signals, to get new subway cars, to make our subways more accessible. We have one of the least accessible subway systems in the country, which is no surprise, right?
I can't even get on there. It's body to body on the subway at rush hour.
Super packed. There are barely any elevators. So if you use a wheelchair or you're pushing a stroller, it's extremely difficult to get on. So this rally, if anybody wants to join me, this anti-rally, right? Because there's a rally against congestion pricing. A bunch of us will be protesting that rally. It's at 59th Street and 2nd Avenue at 2 p.m. So
I'll be on 56th Street protesting Jackie.
Hey.
You better not charge me congestion pricing for riding my bike. I will sue you.
Why is that even? That's not even a thing.
isn't it?
No.
Oh, okay, just check.
What?
Well,
Who are you?
Good morning to you, Stanley.
Good morning. Sorry I was late. The trains weren't working. We got to find somebody to pay for them, huh?
I know. All the trains went local, and the train operator on my D train was like, if you're waiting for an express train, you will be here forever.
No, they did not say that.
She literally said that.
Did she? You know what?
literally said that.
Can I just give a quick shout out to all the MTA workers?
Yes.
I've been running into a lot who are like really funny. Some of them I really believe are radio announcers.
I know.
Because they're like, good morning, New York.
I know, I
this
love
is
it.
the Q3. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I love a happy conductor and driver.
And shout out to them because, train service has gotten so bad and it's not their fault and they're doing their jobs really well. And they oftentimes get the brunt of the anger from people who are mad about stuff that is not in their control or their fault. So shout out to them.
Yes, so yes, shout out to them, and also shout out to you guys, everyone who is watching us already on Facebook Live. Emanuela says, good morning, glad I could see you guys. We're glad you could see us too. We've had some technical difficulties, but we are live on Facebook Live. We're also live on Instagram. Not yet, but we will be. And a few, our intern is working on that now. Stanley, did you want to let people know who you are, or did you want to just sit there?
If you don't know who I am by now, you will never know me. That was a good song.
If you don't know me by now.
You guys are not even remotely in tone with that. So, guys, this is Stanley Fritz, the king of the PC 1s and 2s, the first watcher of Us. No, I said
Hold up! I just want to say something. I was invited to the Us premiere with Jordan Peele and Lupita, and I turned it down. You know why?
What's wrong with you?
I am petrified of scary movies, and I'm just now getting over Bird Box. It gave me nightmares, and I cannot take scary movies. That's why I did not see Us, and I just want everyone to know.
Let me turn her mic down a little bit. She's excitable today. Yes, if you haven't seen Us, you should see it. It is great, and it's not just about racism. Actually, it's not about that at all.
Really?
Yeah, it's about us. All of us. It's a really good movie, though. You guys should check it. And the ending is crazy.
I heard Lupita should be nominated for an Oscar.
Lupita should be nominated for multiple Oscars.
I'm afraid to see it, but I want to see it.
No, this isn't like Get Out when the interracial couples are feeling real awkward at the end.
Yeah.
This ain't that type of party. But, guys, if you want to talk to me some more, I'm always on the Twitter. My Twitter mentions have been in shambles all week, but you can tweet me at Stan Fritz. You can also talk to me on Instagram at Stan Fritz, where I keep on asking questions and then getting really frustrated and confused about some of the answers I'm getting in my polls. But you can go in there as well. And if you really want to get interesting, talk to me on Facebook at Stanley Goodhair Fritz.
So we have a great show lined up. Later on in the show, we're going to be talking about sex and how you're paying for it, and if it should be decriminalized. But before we get to that conversation about decriminalizing sex work, the pros, the cons, and the debate that's going on the left, by the way, we're going to start things off about some of the news stories that we've been talking about. The Mueller report, of course, is about to drop today, I heard.
It dropped on Friday.
Yes, it has been released, but the public, I heard that they're going to give at least a summary, maybe as early as sometime today. But of course, we need to see the whole thing. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the lovely AOC and some other things. Again, guys, this is Let Your Voice Be Heard. Call us up and let your voice be heard. The number is 212-650-6903.
You
can also tweet us at BeHeard
_radio.
And you can leave a comment on Facebook.com. Let your voice be heard. All right, guys, a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about sex later.
All right, sure. Charge me on the floor. Hey, charge me on the floor. Wait, charge me on the floor? What does that mean? We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you're just tuning in, this is Stanley Fritz. I'm here on your PC 1s and 2s, and let me tell you something. You better conjust my pricing right away because I want that train to work properly. I'm here in the studio with Selena Hill and, of course, Jackie Transit Mommy Cohen.
Hey.
Where can I get those Bodega Boy Metro cards?
I know where. I have to go. You can go. There's like a few stops. I think Atlantic terminal. They're probably sold out though by now.
Yeah, I know,
would
right?
Assume, but
They
I
couldn't
need
put it
one
on the
too.
real train stops like Morris Avenue. in
No,
the Bronx.
right. I feel like there were none in the Bronx.
Gun
It was
Hill
just like,
Road.
yeah, they should have a Gun Hill Road.
Gun
That
Hill
would've
is a
been
very Bronx train stop. Gun Hill.
Yeah, I know.
It's a hill full of guns. You ever been there, Selena?
Yeah.
Your husband.
What's a story where you thought that Gunpoint was a place?
Oh yeah, so like I thought gunpoint was a place until I was 15 years old. So I'd be watching the news and they'd be like, 2 men were robbed at gunpoint. I'm like, why do people keep going there? Like, what's wrong with them? Yeah, so I wasn't the smartest person. But guys, we are not here to laugh at me and the silly things I believed when I was yesterday years old. Instead, we are here to talk about the news roundup, things that made you laugh, cry, curse, flip a table, or just kind of scratch your head. And we got lots and lots and lots and lots of messy, spicy, scalding hot tea for you this week, including, first things first, Selena Hill is dating Tristan Thompson of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Wow, congrats.
No, I'm not.
Mazel
Stanley.
tov.
Why would you
Mazel.
even say that?
You're not?
No.
What's wrong with Tristan Thompson? He's a faithful black king.
Yeah, I'm sure. So faithful. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but-
why he's moved on from Chloe. and
he moved
dating
on while he
someone
was
else.
with her.
Exactly. He moved on while he was with her. It's horrible. Yeah. So so let's talk about the real news, not the fake news that Stanley just told everyone. Speaking of fake news, so President Donald Trump himself is saying Mueller should release the report. We know that Robert Mueller spent 2 years investigating Russia, Trump's alleged collusion, and everything else that was going on during the election concerning Russian election meddling, and he has it. But it's now up to Attorney General William Barr to release the full report or not. Some people are saying they may just send it to the White House first and let them fish through it, and then they may give us a very condensed version that, of course, would only glorify Trump. But, I mean, if Trump is so innocent and this is just a witch hunt like he's been saying for all these months, then he should release the full thing. Jackie?
I mean, I don't know. Do we really think anything's going to come from that? I'm so
I-
pessimistic.
Go ahead, Selena.
No, that's Stanley.
Sorry, guys. This has been an interesting morning.
Yeah.
So anyway, a lot of really horrible things have come out already, and nothing has happened to him.
Yeah.
Right, that's true.
So I feel like there's nothing, unless they said he ate a baby while the baby was still alive. I don't think there's anything he could do that would make anyone feel like he needs to be held accountable. They literally have proof that he stole $50 million worth of money in false tax revenue, and that he was lying about his value so he can undersell buildings.
Right.
But nothing happened. And let's talk about all the accused rapes that we know about. And nothing happened. So what could possibly
Right.
come out in this report that would
And I
change
think,
us?
I've heard a lot of people say, well, look at all the people around him that are going down. So he must be guilty. He must, there must be something there. If all these other people that surround him, his close, confidants and advisors are going down and going to prison. But we know that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
Look at New York State politics, right?
Yeah.
You have a governor in office right now whose closest advisors have been indicted or have been charged or going to prison, and he was acquitted, or he wasn't acquitted. There was no charge at all. There was an investigation into his dealings, and nothing was found, right, by Preet Bharara. So I'm not very optimistic that anything will come out of this. I'm definitely taking a pessimistic stance.
Well, we know that the Southern District of New York is still investigating Donald Trump, and if they do find something, they can indict him. Mueller has said that there will be no more indictments, at least from his office, but he's being investigated in other places. I'm keeping hope alive. I still want Trump to be impeached, but or at least not reelected at the very least. But then again, I mean, he's telling his base I think on Wednesday, he was like, oh, some man literally just started filing a report against me. And he's being he's downplaying the significance of it. And what's happening is, of course, his base is believing it. Oh, it's a witch hunt. They're just, this random person is digging up information about the president because he doesn't like him. And that's what I'm afraid of, that people are just feeding into this propaganda.
Yeah, I think, that's what he does, right? He downplays everything. It's not, he doesn't act very, quote unquote, presidential, right?
Yeah.
That's been a critique of his. But I mean, of course he's going to downplay it. My question is, we spend a lot of time on Twitter and on social media, and so you see a lot of things sort of like amplified in those spaces. But I do wonder, and of course, like we in this room are in very heavily political spaces all the time, but I wonder what real people think about this. People that are not engaged in politics, that are not maybe engaged on Twitter, because as we know, like Twitter can blow things up in a way that make it seem like they're a bigger deal to everybody than they actually are. So I wonder what the conversation is like in real households.
They don't care. Like people know the crazy things that he's done, and they talk about it's barbershop talk,
right?
It's laundromat talk, it's like chill session talk. But no one thinks he's gonna get in trouble.
Right.
And the Russia thing, it might pop up, but like no one really cares about that because that doesn't impact their day to day. And they at least with my circles of folks who are not political, it's like, well, he's white, of course he's not gonna get in trouble, and he's rich.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, good point there. Speaking of rich people who sometimes get in trouble or maybe have been in trouble, we know that Wendy Williams has, on her show recently, she talked about her struggles with sobriety, living in a house where she has been restricted from getting access to cocaine because she had a cocaine addiction. So she's come clean, and simultaneously her husband who's been cheating on her, I think his mistress is actually pregnant. So it's like everything is going wrong for Wendy Williams. And the irony is her claim to fame has been talking really badly about people and really highlighting their flaws.
I think this is interesting. Yeah, I think this is really interesting. I mean, her career, whether you like her or hate her, that's a whole other conversation. But her career is sort of based on gossip and about celebrities. And she asks, I mean, not even just gossip like behind their backs. Like she'll do interviews with people where she will ask really personal, maybe inappropriate questions, right? And so it's weird to have this sort of lens turned on her. And she's not, I mean, she knows how to sort of deflect it, I guess, a little bit, but there's a lot there that people want to know that she's not engaging with folks.
It's funny, you guys know how she used to be on Hot 97, right?
Yeah.
And then she got taken off air because
WBLS.
Yes, and that too. But she had a show that came on right before Angie Martinez back in the 90s on Hot 97, and she got kicked out of Hot 97 and pretty much all of New York radio because she said Puff Daddy was gay.
With Mace. She said there are pictures of him and Mace, whatever.
Yes. And then Bad Boy refused to play any music on Hot 97
Whoa.
if she stayed employed there, and she got fired.
Wow.
And she had to leave New York and go like work in Philly and other places to come back to make a big comeback. So she's been in a mess for a long time. A lot of people are happy about this. I'll tell you that right now.
Really? They're happy about this?
Yes. You know how many people hate Wendy Williams?
But people love her. I feel like there's more people that love her.
You guys love her.
I don't love her at all.
Oh, you're saying the celebrities are happy about this?
Got it. Yeah, people that like she's talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Theo Martin commented on our Facebook Live. He said, I don't know if I should even read that on air. I'm sorry. I laughed.
He said she's addicted to coke.
Yes, he said that she's addicted to coke. But that's not a laughing matter. I was really happy that she talked about her struggles.
Isn't everyone in California addicted to coke pretty much?
She
like
lives in New Jersey, Stanley. And the show is filmed in New York. But nonetheless,
I know nothing.
We're praying for her recovery, and well, at least I am. And we'll see what happens. I actually appreciate Wendy because her interviewing skills, she wasn't scared to cross those lines and actually, because she's not friends with the celebrities, and she doesn't care about them, she would actually get some good information about them at times. So, yeah. Stay strong, Wendy.
So what's going on with AOC? Apparently she's too Latina now? What's going on?
Yeah, so AOC, obviously we're talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She has been under a microscope when it comes to Republicans. They crucify or criticize any and every little thing she does. On Fox News, this white guy was like, oh, every time she pronounces her name, she does the Latina thing. And then he mimicked her.
Is. So what?
So she had a recent interview where she told Seth Meyers, why are all of these grown men obsessed with me? And I mean, it's true. They're really obsessed. I mean, she's the darling of the Democratic Party. She's, hardcore progressive. She's a democratic socialist. I absolutely adore her. And she's under a lot of scrutiny for even little minor things.
Yeah. And I hate that they're going after her for her pronunciation of. I mean, that is such a sexist trope that we see all the time, where men are constantly criticizing women, especially women in media. And we've talked about this on the show. I think the way that women speak or have like inflection or sort of like, the way that we speak, I think men find annoying often. But I think that's so. I mean, they're really just looking for anything.
Not only is it sexist, it's racist, Stanley.
I mean, listen, there's a whole bunch of white people who are riled up about a brown person saying things. Who cares?
Right,
white people are always triggered about black and brown people. I love triggering white people. That's half of my job.
So Sean Harris left a comment on our Facebook Live. Shout out to Sean. He goes back to the Wendy story we just talked about. And he said, "My aunt hates Wendy. She was a professor at NYU."
Wait, Wendy or
Wendy Williams?
Okay.
His aunt was a professor at NYU and would always say Wendy graduated last in her class, and it shows. LOL.
That's messy. Real quick, I know we got to go on a break, guys.
Yeah, we do.
I just want to get to one more thing. So Cardi B is copywriting.
Yes, she is.
What do we think about that?
Well,
good. Get the bag.
Not only,
but I feel like drag queens have been saying that for years and years and years, like before her. So it's like I don't know. I mean, get the bag, but
listen,
other people have been using it.
Cardi B is from the Bronx, and I'm not talking about like Riverdale or like the nice part of Pelham Bronx. I'm talking about like Castle Hill, Soundview, Houses, Bronx.
Yeah.
If she wants to copyright that and keep getting money, get the bag, sis, because if she doesn't, a white gay man will.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I'll say this about trademarking. And I just want to say the name. I just want to say
now,
the word.
while you still can. Get it in before they start charging you.
So this I want to say. So the Kardashians were long using on their show before Cardi made it really popular. But you know what? I am so happy about this because the Kardashians have appropriated and profited off of black culture, black bodies, and black men for so long. And I was like, yes, now we stole something from them and we're going to get paid.
Wait, what we stole from white men?
No, we stole from the Kardashians, Stanley.
What we stole from Kardashians?
You know what? I'm going to need you to actually pay attention to the radio show.
No. The point that I'm trying to make to you is the Kardashians don't make anything.
They stole it.
Yeah, they're below average.
They didn't come up with that.
They're below average white women that paid for surgery, and they get their cachet by having sex with black men and then posting it on Facebook Live. They're good for nothing.
Exactly. And now Cardi is profiting off of something that they really did popularize. But
they did not popularize
it. They did. They made it mainstream, Stanley.
No, go to any block and that's been said. So I give Kardashians no credit for anything except for culture vulturing.
Well, we're basically saying the same thing, except that the fact that they were saying before Cardi.
I mean, the fact that she named her daughter Culture with a K, I think that alone kind of she can steal from them.
Yeah, of course.
She knows what she's doing.
You can't steal from white people. You're just getting your stuff back.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We got to go on a quick break. When we come back, we are talking about sex work in New York and whether, well, not New York, everywhere, and whether we should legalize it. I think maybe we should.
Yeah.
Oh, we are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. There are two things you need to know right now. The first thing is black men don't cheat at all. Never. The second thing you need to know is I'm in the studio with Selena Hill and, of course, Jackie Cohen, and we are getting ready to talk about sex work.
Why'd you whisper that?
I don't know, actually.
I don't know why you threw it to me. I can't wait to hear your intro and opening for sex work.
Oh, my. All right, guys. So here is what we are doing. Listen, people. We haven't had. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was utterly confused. So listen, guys, we have been having a real conversation about the legalization of sex work in the United States. And the conversation really started to pick up steam when Kamala Harris, a woman who made it her career to aggressively go after sex workers while she was district attorney in California, suddenly said that she supported decriminalizing sex work, which made a lot of activists, a lot of trans activists, a lot of people who have been in this work for a long time kind of give the aggressive side eye because they know that A, she has not only been an enemy, B, she has literally tried to destroy the people who have either been in this work to make money or in this work because they have fallen victim to sex trafficking. And it's opened up a broader conversation because while that's happening at the national level, you have New York State Senator Jessica Ramos and New York State Senator Julia Salazar that are pushing a bill to decriminalize sex work in New York State, which would make it, I think, the second state to decriminalize it. behind Las Vegas, Nevada. And it brought us to this space where we were saying this is a really interesting topic, and it's a topic that we should talk about. You guys should know up front that we all don't agree on what should happen and on whether sex work should be legalized. You guys know I'm the crazy far left hippie, so yeah, I do think sex work should be legalized. So what we want to do today is really engage in a family discussion. So we got our family in the studio and our family on Facebook Live and on the podcast to really start to break down this topic and have, just from a real honest perspective, see where we are and what we are doing. But a couple of things that you guys should know is that sex work, whether it's legal or not, is a very lucrative industry. Actually, according to a study done, it is worth $14.6 billion a year.
Wow.
That's right, $14.6 billion a year. So whether you want to acknowledge it or not, whether you want to legalize it or not, this is still happening. And like I said in the group chat the other day, the thing about sex work, that price never goes down. Doesn't matter if you have a recession, a Great Depression, or a financial crisis, it doesn't go away. It is something that is happening, and it's settled the West. So it's a discussion that we have to have. So before we even get to anything at all, I want to just jump straight into it and ask the burning question. Do you support decriminalizing or even legalizing sex work, Selena?
Oh, wow. We're going right into it. And for those who may not be familiar with the term sex work, when we're saying that, we're talking about prostitution. Obviously, okay, so just FYI on that. I'll say this. I'm still coming to terms with it. So I know that Kamala Harris, she became the first mainstream U.S. presidential candidate to publicly state that she supports the decriminalization of sex work. However, in the past, if you look at her track record, she has been opposed to it. In 2008, she opposed Proposition K, which was a San Francisco ballot measure brought by sex workers to end prostitution arrests in the city. She opposed that. Again, as a senator, she has remained unapologetic about her efforts to shut down Backpage.com. We'll talk about that in a few more minutes in depth, but just quickly, that was a website where a lot of sex workers would use to find a safe mechanism to find customers and clients on the internet rather than just walking the streets, right? Mm-hmm. So that was beneficial to them. Senator Harris, again, she opposed that. I mean, the fact that I'm happy that she brought it up because, number one, it's making us really think about it. I will say, admittedly, I don't know enough about the issue to take a hard stance for it or against it. I've heard a lot of activists against human trafficking saying that sex work should not be legalized because it would only it condones the industry and it's exploitive at nature and it's only going to hurt it. Again, these are people who are progressive on the left who are trying to fight human trafficking. So I think that it's definitely something that we should discuss, and I would encourage our listeners to dig deep into it. And I'll also say, to be transparent, whether a candidate is for or against sex work is not going to really determine how I vote for or against them. So it's a topic that has been in the shadows, much like these workers. Mm-hmm. But I do think we should shed some light on it.
Jackie?
Yeah, I mean, I support legalization of sex work. I get frustrated, and Selena said this, that there are a lot of people on the left, there are a lot of feminists who are vehemently against sex work, right? Yeah. That call for criminalization because they say it is by nature anti-women. And I don't agree. And I think that sex work is work, right? Like the issues that we often find ourselves talking about when it comes to sex work are issues of labor, right? It's issues of work. And if you want to, there was a great quote, and I can't remember who said it, but there was a sex worker activist who said, if you want to abolish sex work, give these people jobs, right? Like give them other jobs that they, that can make enough sufficient money, right? Like I think that the issue with criminalizing sex work or not even making it legal is the same kind of issues that we see around abortion or cannabis reform. It's that it's always going to exist. Yeah. Do you want it to be safe? Do you want to address the real issues, or do you want to just blanketly say, no, we're against this and call it a day?
Yeah, the interesting thing about sex work is that in the United States, sex work, and especially in the beginning stages of this country, was really a way that women can get their independence from men, because it was one of the few places they could actually get work. And I made the argument earlier slightly, but I'll go on further that sex work actually helped to settle the West, because before there were really people living here in the West, it was just desert. and people mining for gold. Then the sex workers came, and then they started making money off of the gold miners. And then when they got that money, they opened up bars and brothels and started to build community in these spaces. And then where those gold miners go when they weren't mining for gold and trying to pay off a debt to the big rich owner, they were going to see the sex workers, or they were going to the bar to have drinks. And then all of a sudden, you started to get a civilization and a town. Sex work is literally the reason we have Arizona, which, I'm not too excited about that, but also Nevada and parts of California. So when we're talking about sex work in the U.S., if you're not having that conversation right there, like, you're not really having the whole conversation. And if we're talking about the history of sex work goes way far back to ancient Egypt and Greece. This is not something new, and it's not something that has always been stigmatized in this kind of way. But because of the way that we view sex in these days and the way that we view women, it seems to be a case where, folks are not feeling good about it. But I want to kind of dig deeper into the pros and the cons of sex work, because I think Jackie alluded to it, and Selena, you said you don't have enough information. One of the biggest arguments against legalizing sex work is because of the sex trafficking ring that we have now, where millions of girls, particularly black and brown girls, are kidnapped every single day and forced into this industry where there's no accountability, there's no tracking system, and they're forced to pretty much sell their bodies. And a lot of them are scarred, are murdered, they get drug addictions, and there's not really a support system available for them. And the fear is, if you legalize sex work, all you're doing is saying that all that stuff that's happening in the shadows is okay. Do you agree with that stigma, Jackie?
No, and again, I think that we need to be a little bit more nuanced in our conversation here. And I think it's problematic that sex trafficking is so broadly defined, because this happens, right? This is true, that there are young girls and young children who are solicited, who are put into positions where they have to solicit sex for money to give to other people, right? But I think that we're ignoring the root causes that lead to these circumstances, right? And to just criminalize it doesn't mean, it's already criminal and it's happening, right? And so it's not working to just criminalize it and say it's illegal to do that, right? And so I was listening to an interesting story about children in foster care who are particularly vulnerable to being solicited for sex or being trafficked, right? Yeah. And instead of addressing those root causes and saying, what are the conditions in which we're putting children into foster care, and where's the accountability measures that are being put into place? We're just saying, no, just criminalize sex work and criminalize trafficking, and we're just going to make it harder. We're going to make the repercussions of these actions harsher, but it's not actually doing anything to solve the real issue.
Yeah. I want to just read a couple of comments off Facebook Live that we're getting. Didi Delgado said, I can't believe I'm agreeing with the white woman. Sex work is sex work. Didi Delgado also said, Ashley Judd spoke out about human trafficking against sex work, but SESTA and FOSTA prevent women from getting paid. It doesn't prevent human trafficking, which goes beyond Backpage and Tumblr.
Right.
So those two, SESTA and FOSTA, are two bills they're talking about that look to, quote unquote, address sex work. But what they did was help to block some of the websites that some of these sex workers were using to, I guess, for lack of a better word, sell their product. And if you talk to most sex workers that have a few friends, that didn't help stop sex trafficking, because a lot of sex workers were able to use that as an end around, so to avoid pimps and do their own work and business, and to screen potential Johns or Janes. So when you shut down the Backpage, when you shut down the casual encounters on Craigslist, when you shut down the sex work that was happening on Tumblr, what their argument is, you're actually making it more dangerous for sex workers, particularly black and brown women, particularly black and brown trans women. So, Selena, we've heard one of the cons against sex work. One of the pros against sex work is that $14.6 billion of revenue coming into this American economy. Do you think that's enough of an argument to legalize sex work?
Not just that, not just the economic argument, but I think that, these anti-prostitution laws are not necessary to protect public safety, nor does it protect actual sex workers to criminalize it. I think that, people who have experiences in sex trade, they also experience a lot of violence. And I think that for me, the real issue is, protecting people from that violence. People in sex trades are often victims in needs of services. And I think it's also important that we denote people who identify as sex workers, those who are trafficking victims, and those who trade sex for survival. My thing is, and this is the emotional investment I have in it, when we think about sex workers, yes, you have some who are making a choice, but that's not the reality for most. Most of them are undocumented. A lot of them are women or trans women of color, and they're being put in these circumstances because of different societal conditions where they can't find work because they're undocumented, or they can't find a job because they're trans and no one will hire them, or they're being abused and they're using this as an outlet for survival. And to me, if we're going to talk about sex work, we have to talk about the conditions surrounding it. And I want to talk about how we actually solve those conditions so that people don't have to. They're not making a choice. They're here because they have to be.
One second, Jackie. I just want to let folks know if you want to jump into the conversation, and we absolutely want you in this conversation, and give us a call at 212-650-6903. Again, that's 212-650-6903. If you're watching on Facebook Live or Instagram Live, please leave a comment. We will get to your comments. Didi's on fire right now. We want to keep hearing from her and more of you. And of course, if you like conversations like this and want more, please consider becoming a monthly paid subscriber at patreon.com/BeHeardRadio. Jackie?
Yeah, I agree with everything Selena said. And I think that what you said is all the more reason that we need sex work to be legalized, right? Because on the one hand, we need to be addressing the root causes that for people who find themselves doing this work because as a means of survival, right? Yeah. What are the ways that we can address the root causes that lead them to that work or that make them vulnerable, and how can we fix those systemic issues? But also, you know, we need to have protections for these workers that are doing this work, right? And I mean, to the point that you said about like people are doing this kind of work because it's a means of survival. Like that's work. That's work, right? Like that's work for everybody, right? And I think that it's bad that, you know, this isn't the only kind of job that, like, I think that there's this narrative like, oh, people are doing this because it's like the only thing they can do and it's terrible and it's like equated to rape and it's, you know, there can never be any kind of consent. And I'm not taking a stance on that necessarily, but what I'm saying is that like work, you know, people find themselves in jobs that are degrading, that are humiliating, that are not things that they would choose to do if they didn't have to do it to make money. And so why aren't we addressing those causes? And in the meantime, there are sex workers that are making money. Why aren't we making every effort possible to make sure that they are safe and that they are protected and that they are given rights as well?
Yeah, Jack, good point. You think people are cleaning dirty toilets that don't belong to them because it's fun?
Right, because because there's this thing about consent and there's this, you know, it's like people do it to survive because they need to make money.
All right, guys, we'll be right back after this quick break. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard. All right, guys, we are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem, and we got some comments. Selena, what are people saying?
Kaihani Bria says, because we're talking about sex work, she says legalizing sex work will have a ripple effect in working conditions for other workers. Workers like strippers, if they're entertainers, why do they have to get paid by having money thrown at them instead of being paid by their employer, like, say, ballerinas? Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, people who go to strip clubs, why do you throw the money? Why can't you hand it? Didn't your mother teach you throwing money is
I didn't throw money at Candy. I handed her the 20 as we were talking about housing policy. Thank you very much.
But I think that brings up an interesting argument or point for discussion, which is that so sex work in most places is illegal, right? Like as we like selling sex to another person, but not porn, not stripping and dancing, right? Like where's the line and why? And is it arbitrary or is it reasonable?
That's a good point. So if you film the sex work, would it just become pornography then? That's a really good question, guys.
If both people are being paid to do it, is it accessible? But if only one person is paying for the other person, that's the line.
You know what? That's a great point, Jackie, and I think that does speak to sexism because the porn in the porn industry, who makes a lot of the money? Isn't it men?
It's the women.
Oh, the women are making
There was actually a porn documentary.
Is it, or is it like the producers?
No, producers probably make the most money, but the women get paid more than men.
I'm not talking about the people in the videos. I'm talking about behind the scenes. I said like the directors, like the producers, like you know the people who own the companies, like you know what I'm saying. Like to me, if men are profiting off of sex work, then, you know, to your point, it seems like it has been more acceptable as of late. But I do want to say that, you know, sex work in general has been frowned upon, especially in this country, until like just a few decades ago. So I'm not surprised that sex work
still is frowned upon.
It's still frowned upon.
I think it's as frowned upon, but like still occurring,
right?
As ever.
Still happening.
So we're running out of time. So I guess the question I want to ask you guys is, let's stop with the nonsense, because people don't really give a damn about sex trafficking. If they did, we'd put in a lot more energy to actually go after the problem, just like we don't really give a damn about drug addiction. So what is the real issue with sex trafficking, with sex workers? I would argue it's that because it gives women agency. And one, and two, we got to talk about the way that men like to control women's bodies. It's the same reason that guys my age are still asking women for their quote-unquote body counts, how many people they had sex with. It's the same reason that we get mad when a woman says that she likes sex in the affirmative. It's the same reason. When women, if you make sex work legal, you are admitting that women have a certain power over men because men are dumb enough to do anything for the idea of just having sex with someone, and now they can use that and monetize it. I think that's the real issue.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think that there's probably some combination of lots of things, but I think that it is weird that we draw these arbitrary lines for ourselves. And I think in the meantime, it's hurtful that we enact these policies of just straight up criminalization that don't actually address the root cause, that maybe cause more harm than good, and say that we're doing something about it. And we see it again. Like, we see this happen with like drug reform, right? Like, let's just criminalize it. Let's just throw dealers in jail. Let's just throw users in jail and not actually deal with the root cause. It only makes things worse.
Well, Rachel Lloyd, she's the founder of Girls Educational and Mentoring Services, which is a nonprofit for sexually exploited women in New York. She herself, she was a sex worker in Germany where it's legal. And she said her experience was absolutely horrible. She says, and I quote in a story for NPR, the commercial sex industry is inherently exploitive. There's nothing that will equalize the power imbalances in the sex industry. And she says the folks who end up in the commercial sex industry are folks who are most vulnerable and the most desperate. She said when she was a teenager and she was working for it, it was brutal. I'm pretty sure she was a victim of some type of violence and things of that nature. So, I don't think that, like, I get it. It's definitely the control argument, but I think that a lot of people who either work inside of it or people like me who just only hear the stigmas, it sounds dangerous. It's not something I would promote for my little sister to do. Like, it doesn't sound like, and also to add to it, a number of people who are sex workers also are dealing with a lot of trauma from their own sexual abuse traumas in the past. So I think that it's not just, men just want to control people's bodies. I think that it's deeper than that.
But I think the deepest that you talk about is sexism and patriarchy, because there's a reason that these women are suffering from these traumas. It's because we don't take sexual assault seriously. We don't take women seriously. We make it very hard for women to earn a living wage to take care of themselves or even their families if they have one. And we don't give them a lot of access to the resources that they need to grow. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't want there to be like a growing sex work industry, which there will always be for the record, then you need to address income inequality.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to address the treatment of women and girls at large, and you need to start taking sexual assault seriously and putting real money behind mental health assistance. Because even like until you do that, they're never going to stop slinging tail. So like, I don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah. And right to your point, I think like the entire system is set up in a way to like keep women down, right? I know so many women who are working full time, who have children, who have partners, right, who are married, who have dual income, have kids, and are like, I can barely make ends meet, and I do it, but I don't have a single second for myself, right? And it's hard. It's hard to do everything quote unquote right, the right quote unquote way, and be able to survive. It's impossible for some people, for many people. But we have a great comment from Christopher Thomas, who says that legalizing sex work makes the entire portion of the culture safer. It's safer for the workers, especially when background checks are provided and obtained for the workers with regard to their customers. And legalized sex work can also make room for standardized health checks for the welfare of the customers and the workers. I agree.
Yeah. So, guys, we got to get out of here, but I want to give everyone a chance to give some closing thoughts. Selena, as for someone who was kind of on the fence about this issue altogether, I'd really like to hear from you first and what you think about this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, I definitely want to spend some more time really digging into this issue. But I found that Decrim New York, it's an advocacy group, they have been fighting to actually stop policing sex workers and spending so much money there. and redirect that money to help people in sex trades get what they need to survive, such as legal services, housing, and healthcare. So I guess my call to action would be, let's support groups like Decrim New York. And they are also on the front lines with, for the past decade, they've been on the front lines fighting against the use of condoms as evidence in New York. We haven't talked about this in a while, but, a few years ago, I think we did a show about how if you were caught with a condom, you could be picked up for prostitution. And people use that to basically profile people, right?
Yeah, particularly trans women in New York City were getting profiled by the NYPD.
And people of color. So again, Decrim New York, I think, is a great outlet who happen to be working to help sex workers and people who happen to be victims.
Jackie?
Yeah, I think, and it's unfortunate that we had hoped to have a guest on for today's show, and it didn't work out. But I think what is really important is that so much of the conversations we're having right now around sex work are about, these poor sex workers and we need to look out for them. And, everybody has a million ideas for how we do that. But I think it's important to engage sex workers in these conversations, right? You hear a million programs and you hear a million forums about what we should be doing here, and rarely do they engage the actual people who are involved in this kind of work. And so I think that it's critical that we be engaging in conversations with sex workers themselves and listening to them and hearing what they need. I mean, the interviews I've heard of women and of people who are engaged in sex work say, Sesta Fossa was a bad thing, and having access to Backpage was a way to keep them safe, and removing that safety protection has been really problematic. And I think that we need to be listening.